Right, let's go back to one of the stories we're covering here on GMT, and that is the huge explosions in the Chinese city of Tianjin from Wednesday. I'm joined by from our Manchester studio, I should say, by David Price, who's the UK president and senior explosion consultant of Gexcon. That's a global consulting company specialising in explosion safety. The reason being, David, of course, there are those experts who are suggesting that if the firefighters hadn't responded with water hoses effectively, we might not have seen those devastating blasts coming from the warehouse itself. Can I just ask you, first of all, before we get into the sort of nitty-gritty of the chemicals, do you know what would be, I mean, in a warehouse fire anywhere in the world, my instinct would be to say, get the water on.
Yes, no, I certainly appreciate that, but as part of any storage of potential materials, you need to understand the risks associated, and part of that risk evaluation would be understanding what sort of media you should use in a firefighting scenario.
Right, so, I mean, give us an example then of what the effect could have been with water. I mean, I should point out that at the moment we've got nothing confirming this story, but nonetheless.
Exactly, we don't really know where we are at the moment, but one hypothesis is some seriously reactive chemicals known as alkali metals, such as lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium or francium. And these metals themselves react violently with air. Also, they react violently with water. And when they react violently with water, they produce a hydroxide, and this hydroxide just evolves hydrogen gas. And depending on the metal alkali in question, that will determine the amount of hydrogen gas, or basically the violent nature of the reaction to create more hydrogen gas. And as you know, this hydrogen gas is highly flammable, in the order of probably 10 times more violent than methane gas. And also with hydrogen gas, you have the possibility and the tendency to create what's called a deflagration to detonation transition. And this is a serious reaction where you can detonate, and it's spontaneous combustion of the whole fuel and oxygen reaction instantaneously, creating basically pressures which travel in the order of 2,000, 3,000 meters per second, and local pressures in the order of 10 to 20 bar.
Right, and we are hearing about the scale in which of this explosion, and it seems to meet that sort of criteria, doesn't it, in a way?
Yeah.
What should, if that were the case, what would have been the best approach?
Well, the thing is if these highly reactive alkalis are normally stored within oil, so that they don't come into contact with air, so that they don't start to react. But obviously, with a hypothesis, if there was a fire scenario, all you need to do is raise the temperature enough to vaporise this oil, and then the oil's gone. And then that could have been an initial fire, which then led to, obviously, the exposure of this metal to allow it to create this hydrogen flammable gas. So the actual scenario here should have been cooling with a different substance, a substance which you typically use on metal fires.
OK, David, thanks very much indeed. David Price giving us his analysis there.